as we continue our discussions. It is my pleasure once again to welcome in a guest who has been on this show a handful of times, and from the Conservative Caucus. He is the president of the Conservative Caucus. And Jim Pfaff, welcome again to 700 WLW. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
So when you look at the polling right now, especially as it relates to the swing states, a lot of those polls are in the red right now. Harris has a very small, just a very marginal lead in Wisconsin, very small 1-point lead in Michigan. I'm sorry, not Michigan, but Nevada. Trump's up about a half a point in Michigan, but you look at that Pennsylvania. Trump has the lead. Carolina, North Carolina, Trump has a small lead. 1-point lead for Trump in Georgia. Same in Arizona. Wisconsin's in play. Michigan's in play. So I look at that. I see that Trump has just made arrangements to have a rally at Madison Square Garden in New York. That is going to be unbelievable. He's also planning on doing rallies in California and some other blue states. And then I read that a lot of Democrats are privately telling each other they are very, very concerned about the state of this election right now. So, Jim Pfaff, I would say it looks like everything is trending towards Trump's advantage right now. How do you see it as you look at these different numbers?
We're still going to have to look at how these polls continue to play out. Not that I put faith in polls, far from it. In fact, I always tell people that polls tell you something. They don't necessarily tell you the reality, but they give you a sense of where things are going, and the trend is more what matters. And I think the trend's definitely working his way. It's really interesting, by the way. I love the spirit of Donald Trump to say, give people the finger and say, I'm going to New York and California, and we're going to win this thing. And it's that heart and spirit that is resonating with Americans. I also think when you're looking at these polls, the American public, it's starting to seep in the crappy response by FEMA in North Carolina, and all the excuses that were given by Mayorkas and even Harris and Biden about all this, and claiming that they were doing something that, you find out when you get the information, they really weren't doing well. And I'm not saying there's no response. They're starting to respond. But the reality is it stunk. And then we're running into another hurricane going in Florida, which you just talked about. And I think that the incompetence and the lack of creative understanding and informed understanding of what's happening in this country and in the world, Kamala Harris just is shallow, and people are seeing it clearly. And I think the first indicator we had of that was the debate between Harris and Trump, which Trump on the points didn't win. But he won the debate because of all the lies that were told by Kamala Harris that came out afterwards, and that really pisses off Americans. So I think that the polls are saying what I perceive through the analysis I just gave, and what I think a lot of us, I'm sure you as well, when we look at this, what we're telling ourselves. Trump's winning this, and I think unless something really bad happens, I think he's going to pull it off, and it's going to be a fairly substantial win.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this coincides with Kamala Harris making herself more available, and the American people really seeing her for what she is unable to do, and she's unable to string together a coherent sentence, a coherent thought. She's incapable of relaying any independent thoughts that she has on her own. And can you get a series of more friendly interviews when you go on 60 Minutes, when you go on The View, when you, of course, she did the Oprah one a little while ago, but when you go on with Howard Stern, who has completely lost his way, from what he used to be several years ago. But even when she had the softest of softball interviews, she still could not perform at a level that makes someone look at that and say, you know what, this woman really is cut from presidential timber. I'm just not seeing it.
No, and the American public is not seeing it. By the way, they're not seeing it around the world I was talking to just a little earlier tonight to one of my closest friends in the world who lives in Jakarta, Indonesia. We were just on the phone. And people around the world are really scared about what's going on here, too, because they know that if American freedom goes away, they're in trouble. It's not like we control everything in the world, but we're highly influential, and we're definitely the center of freedom. But the American people know that that's at stake as well, too. I really believe this. Like, I'm actually more and more confident as I look at these polls, as I watch reactions that are happening. I'm more and more confident that the core of what America is still exists. So when Kamala Harris goes on these programs and acts in this shallow manner, and really, as you rightly say, shows she's not cut from presidential timber, the American people are actually very smart. They're slow on the uptake sometimes because they're just living their lives, but they are very smart. They see these things. And what a wonderful thing. So I was telling my friend in Indonesia, I said, he's all worried. And I said, well, don't worry too much, because this is what campaigns are about. We start to find out exactly what's happening, and people get revealed for who they are. And more times than not, that works in the right way, and the American people can positively assert themselves at the poll. It may take a cycle or two sometimes, but they always tend to get it, and they tend to make the right decision.
Well, and Cam, the part of the point you just made about campaigns and why they're designed that way, they're meant to be rigorous. They're meant to wear a candidate out. They're meant to expose every possible side of a candidate that we can possibly see. And I think the more we see of look, the American people have seen Donald Trump, I think, inside and out over the last 8.5, maybe even more years. And of course, they knew him at least a few sides, the television side of him, before he got into politics. But when you look at what Kamala Harris is doing, and they try to help her out in so many different ways. And CBS, they edited the interview to make her response to the Benjamin Netanyahu question seem, I guess, a little bit more palatable than the nonsensical phrase that she had out there. But again, it just people see this, and I don't think the phrase I like to use is that the sizzle has come off the steak. But I want to get back to the point you were making about the hurricane response, and this administration in particular, and Democrats in general, have really mounted a full-scale attack on the First Amendment in this country. John Kerry, a week or so ago, was at an economic forum in New York, and he was talking about how our First Amendment gets in the way of things that they want to accomplish and things that they want to do. And then Hillary Clinton was out there talking about how the news media is friendly to Donald Trump. And this comes on the heels of the, you remember right before the ABC debate, the study was done, and it showed that ABC gave 100% negative coverage to Donald Trump. And when you put all the networks together, it's like 90+% of the coverage of Trump is positive, and 90% of the coverage on Kamala is or Trump is negative, and Kamala is positive. And that's not good enough for Hillary Clinton. She's demanding more. And now they're going on this tangent about all this disinformation. And I really think that these people, it's part and parcel of who they are, that they not only do they want to control the narrative, but they want to be able to censor the speech and be able to suppress the ability of the American people to criticize their government, which is enshrined in the First Amendment of the Constitution.
You know what's so amazing to me? You're first of all, you're right about all that. But what is so amazing to me about Hillary Clinton coming out and saying these things is that the women who Bill Clinton had inappropriate sexual relationships with were characterized by her and James Carville and Bill Clinton as bimbos. Remember the bimbo eruption?
Yeah, the bimbo eruptions.
That was their request.
Well, Stephanopoulos was part of that crew too. That was there to shut them down.
Absolutely, and that is the sort of twisted, in my mind, evil thinking on the left that is driving so much of this desire to censor people. Listen, Democrats do not have American ideals, or at least modern-day Democrats. I mean, I think John Kennedy did, and there were Democrats in the past. But this modern iteration of the Democrat Party is incredibly progressive and antithetical to every ideal that America was founded upon. This is so obvious when they get themselves backed into a corner. They will show themselves for who they are. And so Hillary saying that is the most absurd. And really, let's be honest, intuitively, the American people sort of get this. It's really hard for them. Just to repeat, they spend their lives just trying to get to work every day and take care of their families and do whatever it is that they want to do, pursue their lives. They don't need to be bound up in politics every single day, but they actually need to pay attention, and they do when things are at stake. And they know a lot is at stake right now. So the way this election is playing out is very similar to 2020, but in opposite, because the economy's gone crazy. Donald Trump didn't deserve the negative response at the polls that he got, and there was some of that in 2020 because of what happened in COVID. He didn't create COVID. He didn't cause the circumstance. It was Democrat governors around the country here shutting the country down. But just the opposite is happening now. Biden and Harris have shut the country down effectively. The economy is much worse than anyone on the Democrat Party is talking about. They're trying to make it out better than it is, and we're really on the verge of recession if you look at it closely. And inflation's out of control because we're printing so much money. The American people know this intuitively. So this is why I have this sense that 2020 is turned on its head in favor of Donald Trump, with him having all the advantages where he had so many disadvantages in 2020 that made it harder to get past those 40-some thousand votes that made all the difference in the Electoral College.
Yeah, and even the people that keep tabs on the Electoral College, I've seen a couple of different breakouts of that, and at least one of them is saying it looks like at least in the Electoral College that it could be a landslide for Trump. So we'll see what happens there. But Jim, let me ask you this, and tell me if you're noticing this, and I feel like I've noticed this as well. And you know, when I get ready for this show, I watch some not all the time, but I look at MSNBC. I look at what CNN is doing. I do what I can to pay attention to the different networks. And is it just me, or does it seem like the networks have really abandoned their attacks on J.D. Vance? It seemed to me that when Trump picked J.D. Vance, they went after everything they could possibly find on this guy, attacked him from all angles. He went on every interview, every Sunday show, multiple Sunday shows, multiple weeks in a row, and he effectively shut them down when they tried to bring up anything, because look, at one point he was a never Trumper. He came out early on and said, I don't think this guy's right for America. But then, after he saw Trump in action, he changed his ways and realized that he was wrong. But I don't see them attacking J.D. Vance or saying much about J.D. Vance at all right now. And I think it's because he was so successful and handled himself so well in that debate against Tim Walz. I think that the networks and the news just wants people to forget that J.D. Vance is on this ticket. They don't even want to say his name anymore.
No, that's quite true, I believe. Listen, there's some sense of it where it's crunch time and you want to know who's going to be president, not who's going to be vice president. But the reality is, if they had J.D. Vance to beat like they were attempting to do at first, and they thought they could do so successfully, they would still be doing it. They did it to Dan Quayle in 1988 to try to take down George H.W. Bush. They did it again 4 years after that. And those maybe were more successful in their effect. But J.D. Vance is a superior person on his feet. And in fact, in many ways, he's as good as Donald Trump on his feet when you put him out in public. And so, yeah, I do agree with your analysis. There's no doubt that they want to avoid him as much as they can because they know they can't beat him. They've tried and tried and tried. And then Tim Walz made the difference all that much more clear because Tim Walz is a freak. I don't say that. By the way, I've been working professionally in politics for most of my 30-plus year career, and I don't typically say this. In fact, I haven't said it about hardly any politician, but Tim Walz is a freak job. You saw that in that debate. It should have been considered embarrassing. That guy, the creepy eyes, the weirdo self-immolation that he put himself through.
He didn't do himself any favors.
It was crazy. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think you're right, though. I think J.D. Vance is a positive that that MSNBC and CNN and all the left-wing media and traditional media that they don't want to touch because they know it helps Trump. They're trying to hurt him as much as they can constantly.
Well, Jim, we got to go. But before we go, it was 11 days ago we learned of the passing of Pete Rose as a guy that grew up listening to 700 WLW and was a Pete Rose fan. Your thoughts on the now late great Peter Edward Rose?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a native Hoosier. I always tell people I was born in Indianapolis. We run a little race there you might have heard of.
A little race.
But I grew up a Reds fan, and I remember watching the Ken Burns documentary, and they played that first pitch out in 1972 that Jackie Robinson did. I was 7 years old at the time. It was an experience in my life because my mom, described it to me and what it really meant as a young kid. And Pete Rose was on that team, and I followed the Reds all the way through the Big Red Machine. This guy was a phenomenon. He was a great player. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But I grew up listening to WLW because I listened to Marty Brennaman calling all the games. And I grew up in that lifestyle of following baseball. He's from Cincinnati, the home of professional baseball, and maybe the greatest player of all time. There's certainly he and Babe Ruth. And it really touched my heart to see that he was gone and he didn't get in the Hall of Fame before that. But I love Cincinnati. I love Cincinnati baseball, and I'm sad for his passing, but I love the legacy of play that he represents, and I'm thankful I had a little opportunity to honor that here on the show tonight.
All right. Well, Jim, I appreciate those kind words, and always great having you on, my friend. And let's try and do it one or two times before the election.
Thanks. Glad to do it, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there you go. Jim Pfaff, and he is the president of the Conservative Caucus. All you got to do is Google it, and you'll find a lot of good information there.